Welcome to the Good Life Podcast, a place where we can come together to seek God's truth, talk about our faith, and encourage one another in our walk with Christ. I'm your host, Tyler King, and whether you're driving to work, doing some chores around the house, or just needing a moment of peace in your day, we're so happy to have you with us. Today I'm joined by Tim Lewis, our pulpit minister, so he can share some of his insights and his history and his experience with affirming the faith. Tim, how are you?
I'm doing good. Glad to join you and have a discussion about the seminar and how it got started, and I think some of the good that it does, especially in Oklahoma City and the surrounding area.
Yeah, so affirming the faith has always been one of those things that, I've known about when I went to Bear Valley. My roommate was Trey Evans, and then I started to become really close friends with Josh Basic and Logan Edmison and some of those other guys. And so North Mac has always just kind of been on my radar. But I think for a lot of people, North Mac is known, if they're not known for the congregation here in Oklahoma City, and being a congregation that loves to study and loves to be around each other, they're known for affirming the faith. And I think it's an event that brings in people from all sorts of different places around the country and even around the globe. We'll talk about that here in a second. But I've always known about affirming the faith. And then when I visited, I kind of realized why I knew about it. It's just such a great event. But I've always been curious about the history of affirming the faith and how it got started. Oklahoma City is such a blessed city in that we have so many congregations together, so many congregations that have unity, so many congregations that get along. I've been to a lot of places in this country, and that's not always the case. And it's unfortunate, but I think it's one thing that sets Oklahoma City apart from other places in the world. So how did affirming the faith even get started?
So I moved here in September of 2004 to preach. Steve Miner joined us the next month. He and his family moved here in October, and I don't remember exactly what year it was, but he mentioned there was going to be a seminar in the kind of Dallas-Fort Worth area. White Rock is the name of the congregation. Tyler, I never remember if it's non-denominational or undenominational, but they called it like the Undenominational Christianity Seminar. And so our Tawny and I joined Steve and Stephanie. We drove down. I don't even remember if there was a Friday night. I just know the format had keynote speakers. I definitely remember Dr. Jack Evans was one of them. Mm-hmm. And then breakout classes, and then you came back in, and there was singing and keynote lessons, and it was just a great program. Some of our teenagers drove down for it. I think everybody enjoyed it. And so at the next elders meeting, we kind of shared with the elders what we experienced and said, I think we could do something like that in Oklahoma City. And that was it. Probably for a year. That was it. And then we went to an elders meeting one night, and Shorty Huber said, basically, hey, boys, what happened to our seminar? And it was like, oh, wait a second, are you giving us a green light? You know what I mean? We hadn't really pursued it. We shared the idea. The experience was so uplifting and encouraging. I don't think that was an area-wide effort. I think it was hosted by that congregation. But we started kind of sharing the idea. When I first got here, a lot of the older, more established preachers met, I think it was every Tuesday. Some of them met twice a week, once for breakfast, once for lunch. And we would go to that lunch and visit with all the other older, more established preachers in the area. And we just pitched the idea, and they all got behind it. Around that same time, and Westside's always been a sponsoring church, Westside hosted a program they called Affirming the Faith. It was not on par with what we're doing now because it was, like I said, it was just Westside's program. Our idea was area-wide, involve as many congregations as we could. So I think Steve knew the preacher over there. Leon Dennis, he called him and said, man, we'd love to use that language because that's what we want to have a program that affirms faith. And he was very agreeable. He was one of the first guys on the planning committee. I don't remember all of the original. I know me and Steve and Don Van Zant, Leon Dennis, all of those guys. I think Russ Dyer was part of it from the beginning. And so we tried to pick a kind of representatives around the area. Dale Hartman from East Side, Leon Dennis from West Side, Don Van Zant from Edmond. And then we just started going to congregations asking them to support it. I don't know how somehow we stumbled on the idea, sponsor a speaker.
Hmm.
And so if you give X amount, and I don't remember when we started, if it was 1,000 or 1,500, but each congregation that gave that amount would have a speaker from the seminar come the Sunday after. It's a Friday, Saturday. So that following Sunday, they would go to the sponsoring church, teach class, and preach. And that's how it started.
That's amazing. Well, first off, I didn't know that you and Steve had joined North Mac so close together. I knew that you had worked together, but I didn't know it was
within a month.
That's amazing. I mean, especially from, a church leadership standpoint, North Mac switching away from Jeff Jenkins was before you, right? And then I don't know the youth minister before Steve Miner, but
my understanding is, and this, we might need to fact check this. I think Jeff announced that he was headed to Louisville on a Sunday morning, and Chris announced that he was taking a coaching job Sunday night.
Oh, wow.
That could be there could have been a delay between that, but I think both those ministry positions were open pretty much at the same time.
Wow. Which is great for North Mac to be able to go through that, but then kind of come out the other side all right from that. But I think it's amazing that Affirming the Faith started with the idea of we can do this, and why not? Why not, swing for the fence and see what we can do. So
Steve was an idea man. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, and still is.
And
still very much.
Preacher Training Camp, he had seen that at Louisville. He brought it here. Internships during the summer, just a variety of different things. And while I would say that we had a mutual agreement, we can do this logistically. Kind of, what would it look like? What would the schedule look like? Steve did all of that. That's how I remember it. And when you're working with an eldership that says yes to new ideas, that's kind of fun.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, yep. And when they're supportive of it, and when they're kind of even more than supportive, kind of on your case about it with excitement. There's been many times where we've brought something before the eldership here, and they've always been very good about supporting it and being energetic about it. It's one thing to say yes. It's another thing to hop on board and say, let's do this, which I think is really great for it. So when Affirming the Faith started, was it always your intent to have sponsoring congregations, or was it just kind of started out of this idea that North Mac's going to host it, and then if anyone wants to hop on board, they can?
I think we immediately started recruiting partnership. I don't ever remember that. It just, I can't remember it being a North Mac thing. We went to this breakfast, preachers from Cherokee Hills, Southern Ridge, Central in Moore, Southwest. You know what I'm saying? There are all these preachers from the area. And when they got on board, when they said, yeah, let's do it. And, it's bizarre. And you don't know if you really want to go into this or not, but it's like there's the idea that there's a negative perception of what happened because OC's lectureship, which had historically been very it brought everybody in the area together. It brought people back to campus. You know what I mean? Well, they discontinued it. And I'm just, whether people really believe it or not, that was coincidental. We were doing this regardless. And it just so happened as they decided that they weren't going to do that kind of program anymore, we were launching this idea. And then started driving to different congregations to visit with them about the possibility of joining us. And so we met with elderships and preachers and shared the idea. And, it It was always a collaborative effort. It was never a North Mac driven, just us, come join us.
Mm-hmm.
It was always funded by area churches. It was always, promoted and planned and sponsored. It was a group effort.
Which I think is, I mean, such a brilliant way of approaching something like a lectureship. I mean, I've been part of the Bear Valley lectureship, and it's not to put that down. I think they do a great job with it. Every year it's a huge success. They've had tons of people come out for it. But I think in terms of unity and keeping congregations close together and working on something, this is a annual event that happens every year that people are able to look forward to, but also kind of get some skin in the game. I know that there's a board that meets to decide speakers and kind of work through topics. So what does that look like in terms of how do you pick the speakers? How do you pick the topic?
It's a disaster. I mean, imagine trying to write a sermon with 9 other guys.
Yeah.
It's really
9
great.
other preachers too, right?
Yeah. And I'm being a little bit sarcastic. It always starts out, the word difficult. It's hard because there are some that really want to have an expository. Let's pick a book of the Bible and focus on that. There are always others that are like, these are themes or issues or topics that we should address for the people that come to the seminar. These are things that are happening in the culture. We ought to have a topical approach. The funny thing is, as hard as it is to finally get there, if you know what I mean, it's like you always at the end of it look back and go, that is a good theme. Those are good topics. And I'm really comfortable with the people we've invited to speak. But it takes time. I mean, we don't get it done in one meeting. And it's very respectful, but I like the fact that you have people from different perspectives kind of arguing their case. That's healthy. I think that protects us from being too one-dimensional. Every year, it just seems like the same thing over and over again. We've invited some younger preachers to be on the committee. They are the ones that brought this year's theme and really stood behind it. This idea of building bridges and connecting with culture. And I'm not saying that the older guys or more established guys on the committee were necessarily opposed to it, but the younger guys were passionate about it. And I think their intensity about the theme really kind of got everybody else on board, but it still takes time. Can we talk about some of these issues from a biblical perspective? Some of it's uncomfortable, but I mean, we decided we need to have some of those uncomfortable conversations, but with a strong biblical foundation behind it. So, of course, the elders always have to sign off. We take everything to the elders before we start making phone calls or inviting people or promoting. Very rarely, I mean, it's happened, but very rarely do the elders override the committee. They look over it, and they've generally been pretty pleased with our work.
Well, that's neat. And I think it's neat to have both young and older in those conversations. You've got, some of the energy and passion and maybe even relevance of the youth, but also, I mean, there's still relevance with older generations. I mean, right now, I don't know what the statistics are, but if you look at the Church of Christ, quite a bit of an older demographic there. And so it's nice to have the wisdom of some of these older preachers there as well. But I remember watching an interview with the Eagles, and Joe Walsh was off on the side, and he was doing his own interview, which is always entertaining to hear Joe Walsh speak. You just never know what he's going to say. But he had talked about the success of the Eagles as a band, and he said something along the lines of, it's a symphony of chaos, and everything is, banging into each other, and everything is just absolutely chaotic. And then you stand back and you go, oh, well, that's how it's all supposed to come together. And kind of like with brainstorming, that's what it feels like sometimes is, different opinions, different views, different topics get thrown around, they crash into each other. And then seemingly when you stand back, you think, well, wow. I mean, I thought this year's topic was phenomenal. I think the church could do a better job and is doing a better job maybe than in the past of building bridges and trying to connect with the culture. So that's topics. Where do you get speakers from? Because I know that can be somewhat of a touchy topic of, Is this guy controversial? Is it okay to have him out? One thing that I've really appreciated about Oklahoma City that I think helps the unity of the churches here is we don't get so caught up in the politics of, is this speaker, super liberal or is he super right? I think there are some speakers that might be just a little bit more left or maybe even more a little bit right than where you and I stand, but they're still speaking on the program. Is there a consensus of where the speakers come from or who picks them?
I think we get recommendations from people that attend. I mean, they'll come to the seminar and they'll share an idea. Have you guys heard this guy?
Mm.
We'll do a little looking into who. I mean, some of these people, because some of this is regional.
Mm.
There are people that are really well known here that if you went someplace else, people have never heard of them. There are very few brotherhood names that in the past, there used to be some names wherever you went, people knew that preacher.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that that's really the case anymore. A lot of it comes from the committee, where they have traveled, gone to lectureships, seminars, heard somebody they hadn't met before. I went down to Focal Point a couple years ago and ran into some guys down there that I just thought were very godly. I was impressed with their character, not just what they said, but interacting with them. There was a humility. There obviously a commitment to, building a biblical foundation for everything they said. And I brought those names back and said, I'd love to see if we can fit them into what we're doing. Now, again, you've got a pretty good diversity of age groups on the committee. Two of them, we've always had retired preachers. I mean, Charles Williams was on the committee well into his late 80s, probably into his early 90s, and he was still serving. And so you've got a diversity of age group there. And I think some of those younger guys know people we've never heard of before. And some of those people ended up on the program this year and were very well received. In fact, I met with the elders last night. They were very positive about the younger preachers on the program. Guys they'd never heard of before went and sat in their class, and they said, "Hey, these younger guys, new to us, they really did a great job. Let's bring them back." That, and you don't want the exact same people every year. There are favorites. There are people that do such a good job. You like to have them, but I don't want to have them every single year. We want a little diversity in that and a little variety. I think people appreciate that. Honestly, I think, if you pay attention, you have a new guy at Affirming the Faith, all of a sudden he starts showing up on summer series throughout Oklahoma City, starts coming and doing retreats and seminars, and you know what I'm saying? It's one way to introduce new people to the area, and I think it's been very effective.
I remember we sat down, me, Neil, and Kathy Pollard all sat down on the same pew, and Boo Scott got up to speak. And I've known about Boo. I mean, we're probably not on a first name basis. I've heard him speak several times. He probably has no clue who I am, which is fine. But sat down and Neil goes, "Who is this?" And I said, "Boo Scott." Man, I've never heard of him before. So he goes on the website, finds his bio, and I'm listening to Boo, and Neil is over here laughing.
Yeah,
if you look at Boo's bio, it's great. And Neil kind of just kept on paying attention, and he goes, "What's his connection with the church? Where did he come from?" And so I was kind of giving a little bit of his story, which he told a little bit in his lesson as well. And I said, "That's Jeff Jenkins' son-in-law." Neil goes, "Really?" And I always think that that's so interesting in the church, how you can start connecting some of these dots. But Neil, afterward, going from who is this guy to, well, that was a phenomenal lesson, I think is really neat. And I think that helps kind of the energy and the freshness of Affirming the Faith of, here's a speaker that maybe I've never heard of, or maybe I know their name, but I've never heard them speak. And now I'm interested in what they have to say. I thought the lessons that I heard, at least this year, were really, really well done. So you've been there from the start with Affirming the Faith. What are some of your favorite memories or stories about Affirming the Faith? I mean, I think for me, one of the things that always catches my attention is just how well this church at North MacArthur does about helping support and, provide for this event. I mean, it's a 2-day event, but man, it requires an army to get things done. And I remember you walk in the kitchen and you see the youth group there helping cut desserts and serve things for the dinner on Friday night. You walk into the gym after the dinner and there's people cleaning up and reorganizing tables and chairs. And my college room was put back together. I mean, it was in shambles. And within an hour, hour and a half, it's totally back to normal. I think just seeing the church here just work so well at supporting this event has been amazing. But I'd be curious to know, this is what, 20, how many years has Affirming the Faith?
I think it's 18,
18.
is what was announced this past weekend. I don't really know. I know you kind of lose track. The pandemic, that was, we did not know. So our date is usually the first full weekend in March. And if you think about that time in 2020, we didn't know what was going on. And I think it was the Wednesday after that they shut down the arena and sent everybody home from a Thunder game. And then it was like, oh no, there's a pandemic. We did not know that when we hosted the seminar. And in 2020, this was an event that caused a lot of people, I think, to get exposed. And that was in some ways, this is so strange. That was a great year for the seminar. The classes and the sermons, just the spirit of everybody being together. It was great. And then within a week, it was like, had we known, we would not have done it. It would not have happened. Speakers went home sick, their kids.
Wow.
Some of them got very, very sick. But like I said, we didn't know. And so then the next year, you don't even have the event. The year after that, you're kind of limping back. People are still a little bit cautious about being around big groups. But, the highlight that kind of surprised us, we were planning a Bible seminar, Bible study. We could bring your Bibles. We're going to study. We're going to address issues and kind of affirm basic biblical doctrines. This is who we are. This is our biblical identity, and kind of lean into all of that. And then we showed up and the singing just knocked us. I mean, it just blew us away. And I'll just be honest with you. I was not expecting that. I think as many people as come because they want to study, learn, and grow, they show up because they love the singing and they love the fellowship. I don't ever remember having a specific conversation about this. I think it probably has a lot to do with the personality of the churches in Oklahoma City and the people behind it. But there has always been a very good blend of tone and content. Speak the truth in love. I mean, even this past weekend, we dealt with some pretty difficult subjects. But I think people were very thoughtful and cautious and respectful. You know what I'm saying? We're supposed to set apart Christ as the Lord of our hearts, always be prepared to give a defense, but with gentleness and respect. And I just think that's always been in place. If you go back and listen to Jeremy Beller's lesson, the kind of lead off class for this past weekend, he said some really important things and addressed some difficult issues. He just does it in such a nice way. And so I think that's always been a real strength of the program. But the singing, I mean, you've got 900 to 1,100 people on a Friday night. They're here because they want to be here. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They made the effort to be here on a Friday night. These are people that the kingdom matters to them. And man, when they are in that setting, they just praise. And sometimes you just sit and listen and you're kind of blown away by it.
Yeah, especially if you sit in the right area of the auditorium. It's amazing. One of the sessions, because we're just running around like chickens with our heads cut off half the time, I would be sitting on the back pew, and it's amazing how quiet that auditorium is when you're on the back row. But then there was one session, I was kind of center mass and then right in the middle of the auditorium. And it was just, amazing to hear all those voices come together. And, that's part of Paul's admonition of encourage one another in psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs. And we can't leave that out. But it's amazing when that happens at full force like that. It seems like nothing else matters in the world. And it seems like all those cares and worries, and you're just there in the presence of God, singing with your heart with people who are doing the same thing. And I mean, yeah, the lessons are great, but that is interesting to see. You put all this effort into a Bible seminar and studying and coming together to learn and to grow. And then the singing is just, well, that's what we do as the church.
It's kind of the star of the show.
And then it takes over. And even that session on Friday night where it's late. When does that start? Like 8:30 or so?
Well, by the time everybody leaves, it's supposed to start at 8:30. I'm guessing it was 8:45, closer to 9, and people were going to spend another 30 minutes on Friday night singing. That's also been interesting. We've done panel discussions at that hour in the past instead of that song session that we do. We've had 3 or 4 of our the speakers that come for the seminar. We've had a theme or a topic. We've either done a Q&A with them, or we've done kind of a specific topic that we're going to discuss. I mean, one time it was kind of race and religion. I mean, Evan Toticini was on that panel, and as a young minister, I thought he was fantastic. But you know what I mean? We had some diversity and people discussing some of the challenges of our life together, even though we're so different, and yet we're one in Christ, and that was really well done. So we've experimented a little bit with that Friday night session, but it's interesting. It's just always gone so well. Everything's well organized. You mentioned we have so many members here. They don't really get to enjoy the seminar. They serve all weekend, but we're proud of the work they do. Couldn't do it without them.
Yeah.
And then just the end result. Now, listen, you can't control what people say. And I know that over the years that there've been, here and there little things that have, raised a little concern. But for the most part, I've just been very pleased with the fact that we are unified. God's people are working together, kind of planning, promoting, and just, financially supporting something that brings us all together. And I think we're really serving small congregations. I mean, there are small town congregations that very rarely have the experience of being in a building that's filled with, and sometimes 1,000 plus. There are churches in Oklahoma City have that every Sunday. That's not a new thing to them. And so they may not really have the same value, but there are small congregations that come, and I just think it encourages them. The fellowship, the singing, the classes and lectures. I think it's been a really important thing that we're doing to promote unity and encourage just other Christians in this part of the country.
Yeah. And I mean, focusing on that unity aspect too, it's neat that some of these smaller congregations, I mean, I don't know what, quote, the smallest congregation would be on that list of, is it 28 congregations that help support Affirming the Faith? But when they show up, yes, it's our building and it's, here in Oklahoma City, but their church is just as much part of this as we are. And I mean, the fact that they can show up and say, we've helped put this on as well, I think is really encouraging for churches and just kind of that teamwork camaraderie. It's not, an elite church with this idea that we're the only church remaining in Oklahoma City that we're going to host this. This is the churches in the local area who are putting this on and coming together and bringing out the speakers and organizing the topics and kind of going from there. So I don't know. To me, it's one of the highlights of the year, which is tough because it's such a busy time of the year. I mean, spring is just so crazy with spring break and Affirming the Faith and everything else. It's moving. But I think every year when I walk away from Affirming the Faith, that was the best year that I've been a part of. And still this year, that was the best year that I've been a part of. And I'm sure the same will be said next year as well. So looking forward to the theme whenever that rolls out for next year. And some of the meetings, I know right now it's just time to kind of rest and collect everyone's thoughts on the weekend, but excited for what's to come in the future. So thanks for the conversation. Thanks for straightening things out. I mean, I didn't know that about all the details about how Affirming the Faith started. It's encouraging and exciting to see that the church can move in such wonderful ways and do such wonderful things through the help of God. So appreciate everything.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Until next time. Adios.